Hello and welcome to my channel Malavika's Magic. Today I will share my views on the process of communication. Let us start with the components first. The components are the elements that remain constant irrespective of the situation. So as we've understood in my previous video that the presence of two or more people is required in order for the communication process to start. So from this, we can identify the components. The first is the sender. The second is the message, which the sender sends it across to the receivers. Then the third component is the medium or the method or the mode. And the fourth component is the channel, that is the route or the path. And then the fifth component is the receiver who receives the message, interprets, and gives a feedback to the sender. So the feedback is the last component of the communication cycle. Now let us understand the components with the help of a diagram. So in this diagram, as we can see, the sender is the first component. He initiates the process of communication and he has an idea in his mind that he wants to share with the receivers. The idea provokes the sender, or rather urges him to begin the process of communication. Now, the sender, for the sender, the idea is the stimulus, internal stimulus. The external stimulus for the sender will depend upon the way the sender perceives information in the form of what he sees or what he reads with the help of his sensory organs. Now, for different people, the external stimulus will be different. Let us take the example of the teacher. For the teacher, the external stimulus is in the form of the timetable that he receives before the commencement of the semester. Also, the fact that the students will be appearing for an examination urges the sender to teach and impart information, provide all the necessary information that will be required for the student to pass the examination or to perform well in the examination. So once the sender decides to impart information, now what the sender has to do is to convert the images that is stored in his brain in the form of words. So these words will be dependent on factors like using the same accepted symbols, universally accepted symbols, that is both the receiver and the sender understand the meaning of the symbols. And thus he will convert the idea into words, and that will be the message for the sender. So the second component is therefore the message. Once the message is designed, then the sender decides how to pass the information to the receiver. That is the medium. So the medium is the means of transmitting message. That is the mode or the method of transmitting information. The medium is decided by the sender, and on the basis of the medium, the sender also selects the channel, that is the route or the path through which the message will get across to the receiver. Now, the channel, after the channel has been selected, the receiver receives the message, he decodes the message, or rather, he tries to associate the words with the images that is stored in his brain and accordingly interprets and understands the information. So the receiver understands this information on the basis of his prior knowledge or background information and analyzes his information and also evaluates his own understanding. So on the basis of that, the receiver will give feedback to the sender. This could be in the form of clarification, or it could be in the form of additional information on the on the message that is transmitted from the sender. It is said that the message sent by the sender should be the same as the message received by the receiver. But that is not the case in a practical situation. This is only possible in an ideal situation. In a practical situation, there are many reasons why the message sent is always not the same as the message received. All these reasons are termed as noise in the process of communication. Noise meaning the obstacles in the process of communication. So when the sender and the receiver, they are communicating in the communication environment. That is the communication setting or the context. Now for the teacher, the environment is the classroom, whereby the teacher and the receiver, the student and the sender and the receiver both understand that it is necessary for them to communicate in a certain manner, that is, use language or select language that is acceptable in a formal situation. Also, this environment changes, or rather the choice of the language changes once the environment changes. So from the classroom, if the environment changes to the canteen, automatically the choice of language will also change. Because in a canteen, the environment is informal. And so therefore, a lot of colloquial words will be used in the process of communication. Having understood this, let me tell you that the sender is also called as the encoder in the process of communication, and the receiver is called as the decoder. Now, let us understand each of the components in a more detailed manner, so that we have a proper understanding of these components. So let me start with the encoder. So as I told you already, the sender is also called as the encoder. So let us now understand the process of encoding. The process of encoding is the process whereby the images that is stored in the mind of the sender is converted into words. As I told you, in a accepted in a range of symbols, code of symbols, and then these words are then put in the form of language. So therefore, the sender is called as the encoder in the process of communication. Now, the question that arises in our mind is, when the sender converts the images into words, he is very particular that the code of symbols should be accepted. That is, both the sender and the receiver should understand the code of symbols. In spite of that, why there is a miscommunication in the process, or why there is a misinterpretation of information. So this puts us thinking as to how does language operate in a practical situation. So now let us understand how the language operates. So language, as we all know, is used to shape our experiences. Now, I would say that language is not exact. Now let me explain to you with the help of an example. For example, the word calculate is derived from the Latin word calculus, which means a pebble. Now, many years ago, these pebbles were used for counting. That is, for accounting purpose, the pebbles were used or helped of the farmer or any other person to keep a track of whatever they spent and whatever they earned. Now, once the numbering system developed, the pebbles were no longer used, and instead of that, the numbers were replaced. So we have the number 5 was replaced, or number 15 was replaced in the place of pebbles. Obviously, it became much easier to keep a track of things. But it nevertheless led to many misunderstandings, because not only did the word calculate, which was associated with pebbles, the meaning changed. It also was modified into many other meanings that could be used in different contexts. As such, there was no direct relation to the meanings that were assigned to the word calculate. So therefore, there was a possibility of misunderstanding and misinterpretation of information. Now, let us understand how the word calculate can be used. For example, the word calculate could be used to determine a mathematical process. Then the word calculate was also used to trying to figure out the expression of a person. And the word calculate was used to judge a person. So, with this variety of meanings assigned to the word calculate, it is obviously very difficult for the receivers to associate a particular word when it is used by the sender. As such, since there is no, logic as to why the word calculate has been associated with various meanings, so therefore, we can say that this leads to misunderstanding or between the sender and the receiver. And we can also say that it is because of this, language is artificial. Language has been created by people, and it is the people who has decided to refer to a particular object with a particular word. So there is nothing like that, that word has somebody has put it in a rule, or there are some rules that are followed in order to associate that object with that particular word. There is no rule that is followed. It is a simple way of referring. A word is simply used to refer to a particular word. Now, therefore, we also say that language is just a combination of words, and we can use any word in order to name a particular object, as long as it is universally acceptable. So it is because of this reason that there is a noise, or there is an obstacle, or there is a possibility of misinterpretation and misunderstanding. And this misunderstanding could further lead to various other issues once it is not clarified, or once it is not resolved at the initial stage. So now let us understand the next component, that is the medium. The medium is the means by which information is transmitted. So there are two kinds of medium, that is oral and written. Oral is the use of words in face-to-face situation. For example, when the teacher communicates with the student in the classroom. Then the other one is the written form, whereby we also use words, but we do not have a face-to-face situation, and moreover, we use the computer or the internet, okay, or the postal services in order to send letters or emails. Now, both this method of communication uses words, and so therefore, it is also called as verbal communication. Now, there could be other means of communicating. That is non-verbal communication, that is with the help of signs and symbols. So without using words, we can still communicate meaning to the receiver. And this is very easily done with the help of a body language, facial expressions, gestures, and the sign language. Now, there's another means of communication, that is the visual communication. This actually enhances the understanding of the receivers. For example, if the sender wishes to draw the attention of the receiver to the growth of the organization can demonstrate in the form of a graph, a pie diagram, or a bar diagram. And this will help the receiver to understand the message conveyed. As at the same time, the receiver will also be able to analyze the information in a much better manner. Now, there is a possibility that the sender could use two or more medium, that is two or more media, while communicating. For example, oral communication can be combined with non-verbal communication as well as visual communication. In such a case, the message sent by the sender will have fewer misinterpretation as compared to when the sender decides to use only one medium to transmit information. Having understood medium, let us now go to the channel. The channel is the route or the path of communication. The route or the path is decided by the sender, and it is also dependent upon various factors. For example, the speed of sending messages. At what speed the sender wants the receiver to receive the message will determine the channel chosen. If I want the message to be received very fast, I can use the email because it can reach out to a larger audience, and also the message can be communicated within seconds. Then the distance is another determining factor. Distance between the sender and the receiver. Long distance communication, the channel cannot be a face-to-face communication. In a long distance, the channel, a telephonic conversation could also become problematic because there could be disturbance in the network. So therefore, in long distance communication, the better option will be to choose email as a channel of communication, the internet or the computer or the cables, okay, as a channel of communication. So, but suppose if we have to communicate to a person who is not very far from us, then we can communicate using the telephone. So the telephone becomes a very easy way of communicating, and at the same time, nowadays the facility of even seeing the person, okay, face-to-face interaction is possible in a telephonic call. So therefore, it becomes easier for one to communicate. So that is the channel which that is chosen when you're communicating with someone who is very close to you or who is not situated very far from you. Then comes the next aspect, that is the secrecy. To what extent, I want to share a confidential message to the receiver, that will determine the channel that I want to use. If I use the channel as the fax, that is not reliable because many people could have the opportunity to read the fax message. So therefore, fax is not the appropriate choice for this particular this particular reason. So the best choice would be, when you're communicating confidential information, is through oral communication. But if it has to be communicated to someone who is at a distance, so that email would be the best option to communicate. Next comes the cost. Every organization will try to reduce the cost. So therefore, the sender has to be very particular when he selects the channel. He has to find out which is the best possible way to communicate. At the same time, also to keep a note of the cost that will be incurred while communicating. Then the next is the record. Every organization wishes to maintain a record of the communication process. This record helps the organization for legal purpose. So therefore, it is essential for the sender to find out which channel will help him or her to maintain a record of the conversation of the message that is sent across. So depending upon the purpose, the channel will be selected by the sender. So one particular medium could have many channels, and depending upon the purpose, the sender will decide which is the appropriate channel. Now, having understood channel, let us now move on to the process of decoding. The process of decoding is the process of interpreting, in understanding the information given by the sender. As I said, the decoder, the receiver, who is also known as the decoder, will try to associate the words in the message with the images that is already stored in his brain. And in this way, the process of decoding begins. Now, let us go on to the next aspect of it. Once he interprets the message, understands the message, then the receiver also acts on it. He acts on it on the basis of his prior information, background information, correlates with the information sent by the sender, and then also tries to find out what basis the message sent by the sender is different from the background information that he already has. So if there is a major difference, automatically the question arises. And this questions actually leads to the feedback given by the receiver. So the feedback is the last component of the communication cycle, and the feedback is the response given by the receiver. It is said that the message received should be same as the message sent, but we have already understood that that cannot be the case in a practical situation. What happens in a practical situation is the message received is always different from the message sent by the sender. And this feedback is very important for the sender so that he or she can clarify the message, could modify the message, and also to some extent, give more examples so that the receiver understands the message in a much better manner. So let us now try to find out what are the different types of feedback. The feedback could be either positive or negative. Positive meaning that if the receiver has interpreted the message in the same way as the sender intended, then it is a positive feedback. But if the message is not interpreted in the same manner, then it is a negative feedback. Both the types of feedback are very important for the sender. Now, let us go to the next type. That is, feedback could also be non-verbal in nature. In a face-to-face situation, it is very essential for the sender to observe the facial expressions of the receiver, because all receivers may not respond using words or using verbal communication. So it is quite obvious if the sender wants some sort of feedback, he should be able to gather it by observing the facial expressions of the receiver. The body language, the eye contact, the eye movement, everything will help the sender to analyze the feedback of the receiver. Then comes the next type of feedback, that is, feedback is immediate. Sometimes the feedback is immediate, and this is possible only in oral communication in a face-to-face situation. You immediately get a feedback. It is spontaneous, and therefore it is said that oral communication is more effective than written communication, as the immediate feedback could be a blessing for the sender. And this will help the sender to either proceed further or try and modify the information sent. Now, let us go to another situation where we find that the feedback is delayed. It's delayed because most of the receiver wouldn't like to give the feedback immediately. That is one of the reasons. Some of the receiver would, just decide not to give feedback. And then there could be others who might give a feedback after many, many years. So the delayed feedback is because the writer is not in contact with the receivers. So here what happens is the writer assumes the receiver. He assumes that the receiver, he visualizes the receiver, and on the basis of that initiates the process. So the feedback is in the form of either reports or in the form of, for example, a book that we read, the newspaper. Okay, so this is the communication that takes place. So sale of a particular book determines the feedback for the writer. So this type of feedback is also called as indirect feedback. Direct feedback is hard to receive. So therefore, an indirect feedback helps the writer to understand whether he is accepted by the receivers. So if there are so many newspapers, in the market, so the demand for a particular newspaper determines the acceptance of the particular editor. Now, let us go on to the next aspect, that is, we have all understood that the feedback is an important element in the communication process. Without the feedback, it is said that communication is not effective. At the same time, communication is incomplete without the feedback. So we have understood that the feedback and the other components are very crucial if their communication process has to be effective. Now, we have to also understand that apart from the components, it is the communication between the sender and the receiver should ensure that that both sender and the receiver, they have a common understanding towards each other. They are cooperative and they also have an understanding of, rather we can say they're empathetic towards each other. So the sender should empathize with the receiver and the receiver should empathize with the sender. So this empathy is very important if we want the communication process to be effective. What we call as the personal touch, or at what we call as the understanding or building relation, or as we call as as developing a rapport. That rapport is possible only when the sender and the receiver both share a common background, a common understanding, and have a common mutual respect and a mutual empathy for each other. So having said this, I would like to conclude my presentation, and I would thank you all for being patient listeners. I would like to remind you that I have uploaded a quiz in the description box. Those of you who are interested can attempt that quiz and evaluate their own understanding. Thank you once again. So having said this, I would like to conclude my presentation, and I would thank you all for being patient listeners. I would like to remind you that I have uploaded a quiz in the description box. Those of you who are interested can attempt that quiz and evaluate their own understanding. Thank you once again.